Hello, my lovelies, and welcome to Divination Death Witch. I'm your host, Rin, and today we are exploring the Bostwick Bldg in Tacoma, Washington. This building is one of the many reportedly haunted sites here, so we are going to talk about the building's history, the claims of haunting or paranormal activity, and then we're going to talk about my trip to the Bostwick Bldg, as well as what came up in my reading on the paranormal activity there. I will give a quick trigger warning here. I do explore some theories as to who might haunt this space and how they passed. Peaceful passings, as a general rule, don't create earthbound spirits, so listener discretion is advised. This is going to be the first episode in a series where I visit and read at reportedly haunted locations around Tacoma and surrounding areas. During this series, I will give the full addresses of public spaces where it is generally acceptable for the public to go. Why am I making it a point to do this? Well, in researching the paranormal in this area, you'll find a lot of things referred to by old names that are no longer in use. Or sources will say something like, in the space where the Robertson building stood. I have found that a lot of the time, the names being used for the geographic site where the haunting is supposedly taking place haven't been in use for half a century or more. And that can make it hard to find the area that you want to visit and explore. If you're in the area and you want to check these places out that I'm going to talk about on the podcast, I don't want to make you have to hunt down these places to do the digging to find the actual current addresses. And today's site is definitely one that I recommend visiting, whether you love coffee or the paranormal. The Bostwick Bldg was erected in 1889 and is named after Dr. Henry Bostwick, who, from what I've read, was the first doctor in Tacoma. It was originally his house that stood on the plot of land where Broadway, 9th, and St. Helens Avenue now intersect. This building was originally the Bostwick Hotel, run by C.W. Cadigan, but in 1893, Dr. Bostwick took over as proprietor, according to the Pacific Coast Architecture Database. Though I've looked, I haven't really found a date as to when the hotel closed. Today, there are a few businesses on the ground floor and apartments on the upper 3 floors. This building is definitely a statement piece with its triangular shape to fit the parcel where these 3 streets come together. It is a 4-story, warm yellow building with terracotta colored trim and large windows. It definitely stands out. There is no doubt about that. For quite some years, the building had taken on a very dingy appearance, being draped in the algae mold buildup that happens to anything here in the Pacific Northwest that isn't pressure washed in a while. But I'm so happy to tell you that apparently the owners of this building have listened to the public chidings of local residents, and the building has been beautifully cleaned so that its beauty really does shine. Any of you who have ever seen the 1990 movie I Love You to Death with Tracy Ullman and Kevin Kline, you've gotten a peek at the Bostwick Bldg as it was used as the location for the pizza shop in that movie. If you'd like to see my photos from this adventure and my reading while I was there, you can check them out by joining the Discord. The link is in my link tree. Any Divination Death Witch episodes that have photos that go along with them, I will be posting the pictures in the Haunt Discord, so it's worth joining just for that alone. The Bostwick Bldg exists among a cluster of other reportedly haunted buildings. If you're checking out the photos in the Discord, you'll see the building on Broadway that was the Winthrop Hotel. Then you'll also see the Pantages Theater, said to be haunted by Mae West, and the Rialto Theater. There are many other buildings in this part of town that are also said to be haunted, but those are just the ones that you can stand at the Bostwick and see just by turning your head left to right. Today, in the point of the Bostwick building, on the ground floor is Cremello Cafe at 764 Broadway if you are entering it in your GPS. This part of the building has been several different coffee shops over the years. Back in 2014, it was known as Tally's, but since the pandemic, it's been about 3 or 4 different coffee shops. I honestly can't keep track. It's been so many since 2020. Cremello is an organic shop, so it is on the pricier side, but having been there, I think it is absolutely worth every penny, and you've got to impress me for me to say that. I got there about 9:30-ish on a Wednesday morning. My oldest son has classes in a building right across the street on that particular day of the week, so he came along and got a coffee and a cinnamon roll to go, and my youngest hung out with me at the cafe. He got a white chai latte and a Nutella brioche, which was I had a mocha, and everything was absolutely spectacular, and the staff is just amazing. The interior is part old world and part industrial. Dark wood grain floors, a faded old woven rug, with medium hued wood tables and chairs are a nice contrast to the sage green walls. Ferns, snake plants, and a lemon tree are just a few of the plants you'll find around the cafe and on the windowsills. There are actually 2 rooms to this cafe. The first is in the point of the building where you order your coffee and your pastries from a case filled with noms that look like they are straight out of a magazine. This area has some smaller tables, and of course, there is a table with 2 chairs in the very point of the building, which is where we sat. In the other room, you'll find some larger tables, a piano, and the moody staircase that leads up to St. Helens Avenue. When we first arrived, I sat facing out the windows at the point because I wanted the view. But once I began doing readings, my youngest and I switched places because I wanted to face the inside of the building as I pulled my cards. When I first envisioned this series, I thought about recording audio of me doing the readings at the location. But these are, for the most part, going to be public areas, meaning I wouldn't be able to control the background conversations that might be picked up by my mic. And I know some of these locations are absolutely 100% fine with me just going in and reading quietly at a table, but they might not be okay with me recording at some of these locations, and I want to be respectful. Another thing I have to consider is there are locations here like Pike Place Market that require you to pay for a permit in order to be allowed to record on the property, depending on what you're doing. This is why I did not record audio. I opted instead to quietly do the reading at the site to avoid any potential issues. I took notes of each question I asked and what cards I pulled and my impressions. I also did my best to remember to photograph the cards for each question that I asked, and I will include some of those photos in the ones that I post in Discord. I don't think you really want to see all of the photos of that, but I'll post a couple. Over the years, staff who have worked in the various coffee shops have reported chairs moving, faucets turning on and off on their own, other items being moved or being out of place, the piano playing on its own, and lights flickering. Before I go any further, I just want to be clear that I did not do a paranormal investigation of this space. I did not use any equipment, and what I'm going to relay to you is entirely subjective, based off of what cards I pulled, what I observed, and what I got as a medium. I am not offering proof of anything. I'm just chatting with you about my morning there, and I highly encourage you to visit the space for yourself if you're in town and draw your own conclusions. The energy in the space is very light, which often is not what we expect when we enter a space that is said to have paranormal activity. It would have been very easy for me to forget entirely why I was there and to just enjoy a leisure Wednesday morning coffee while taking in the vibe. I can't speak for anyone else, but this is a space I'd have a hard time being anything but happy in. Not really what you expect from a haunted building. Who is it that people believe haunt the Bostwick? There are two main theories that I found in my research. One says that in 1908, a very prominent locksmith in Tacoma committed suicide in his room at the Bostwick Hotel. I tried and tried to find a name for this person or anything that would verify this story. Early Tacoma loved dark headlines in their newspaper, and if you do any digging into Tacoma's history from the late 1800s through the early 1900s, you will find some truly disturbing and some might say callous headlines about tragedies and deaths in the area. Like, it is shocking some of the things that they printed as headlines back then. The fact that I couldn't find any reference to a prominent locksmith or reports of suicides at the Bostwick building led me to the conclusion that this particular theory was probably urban legend. The other story is that a would-be robber was shot and killed by police in front of the Bostwick in 1927. Just to give you an idea about my process for all of this, what I not so affectionately referred to as my seed source for finding potentially haunted locations in Tacoma is not a reliable source. It is a book that was published in 2014, and because I'm into the history of Tacoma, I know there are a lot of bits of inaccurate information in this particular book. However, it is focused on Tacoma, and that is why I draw inspiration of places to look into from the book. I try to give the author the benefit of the doubt. Maybe back in 2014, some documents hadn't been found yet or weren't accessible to him, so he had to just record whatever locals maybe told him about sites. I don't know. But in 2024, 10 years later, it's very easy to find information that disproves the things he states in the book, especially when it comes to historical events. I use this book as a mere jumping off point to find the names of potentially haunted sites that I might want to look into, but I don't use this book as an academic source of information, and this is going to be important. When getting ready for something like this, I try to walk a fine line between doing enough preliminary research before the session so that I know what questions to ask, but not doing too much research that I'm entering into things with a super strong bias that is going to skew what I get. But because I do need to do some preliminary research, I do always have some level of bias. I feel that's okay as long as we acknowledge it and account for it when we draw our conclusions, especially when we were doing something subjective like this. I'm not trying to prove anything. While I do communicate directly with earthbound spirits in certain cases, when I do something like this, I prefer to at least begin the process by communicating with my guides and ancestors rather than unknown earthbound spirits. I take all of my spiritual communication precautions, but I begin by communicating directly with my guides and ancestors unless or until I feel that direct communication with the spirits in question is needed. The energy here doesn't scream haunted, and I feel like the best question to ask to start off was, are there lingering spirits in the Bostwick building? I used the ACEs yes-no method to answer this, and if you are interested in learning how to answer yes-no questions with tarot, I have a PDF in my Etsy shop that teaches this and several other different methods. In response to this question, I got the Ace of Wands, the Five of Swords, and the Ace of Pentacles. To me, this says yes, there are lingering spirits in this building, and at least one of them is there because they feel a sense of defeat. My next question was, what spirit is the most active? I drew the Page of Cups, the Five of Cups, and Temperance. This spirit is someone who loved another person very deeply. Their entire world was the object of their affections, but the person they loved deeper than the waters of the Sound itself broke their heart. They either rejected them or broke up with them, divorced them, something along those lines. It could be interpreted either way, but I really feel like it was the dissolution of a marriage or a long-term relationship. This spirit just couldn't find any sort of equilibrium or balance in their life without the person they loved so completely. They felt they had given everything they had to this person, and without them in their life, they had nothing. They felt as though they had given their whole life away. I then asked for confirmation. Was this spirit having trouble in their home romantic life before their passing? The single card I turned up was the Nine of Pentacles. Now, if you follow me, you know that I like to watch other readers because you never know what you may learn from them. A few months back, I found a reader who often interprets the Nine of Pentacles to mean someone is alone or single, and this resonated with me and is now among the meanings that I associate with the Nine of Pentacles. For me, this was confirmation of what I felt with the previous cards. This person felt all alone in the world. How did they pass? The card that I turned over here was the High Priestess. In this case, their cause of passing had something to do with their stomach. I'm given the sense that they ingested something that either directly caused or contributed to their passing, but I also sense some sort of trauma or injury. It feels almost akin to a chicken or the egg debate. Did the injury cause the passing, or was it what they ingested? Or was it a combination of the two, and a case where if one or the other hadn't happened, they'd have been fine and gone on to live longer? This is something new I thought I'd try, but I asked how many spirits are present at the Bostwick Building and drew the Four of Cups. 4 spirits? This is a method I'm going to experiment with more in the future, but it is possible that there are 4 spirits present at the Bostwick Building. Now for some plot twists. My bias going into this was that the locksmith story was more than likely urban legend, and that the likely culprit of any activity at the Bostwick Building would turn out to be the robber killed on the sidewalk. I asked if the spirit of the robber was still here and got the 3 of Wands, the 3 of Cups, and the 2 of Pentacles. A resounding no. But not only that, from these cards, my guides and ancestors show me that though society might have looked down on him as just a convict, not worth their time, he had loved ones on the other side that came to help him cross over right at the time of his passing. After my session, I researched this incident. There was no robber killed at the Bostwick Building. Mike Rydecka and Samuel D. Ansel had planned to rob the Winthrop Hotel across the street from the Bostwick at 2:45 a.m. on December 22nd, 1927. Their plan was to rob the Winthrop, run out the Broadway Street exit of the Winthrop, through the Bostwick Hotel to St. Helens Avenue, where they had a taxi driver waiting against his will to be their getaway driver. Unfortunately for Mike and Samuel, someone had tipped off the Tacoma PD, and they set up a trap for the ex-cons. Both of them were recently released from prison, according to what I've read. Chief Detective Jurish took up the position at the desk of the Winthrop. When Mike Rydecka jumped over the counter and demanded the money, Jurish shot him once. Rydecka then opened fire on Jurish, but Jurish shot him again, killing him inside the Winthrop. Ansel attempted to flee, and from the account that I read, he did make it outside of the Winthrop building before he was shot and seriously wounded by police. He may have actually been shot on what is now the Bostwick Building property, but he survived and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. This means we can debunk the myth that a robber who was shot and killed by police in 1927 on the Bostwick property haunts the building, because we know the robber referenced in that story never made it out of the Winthrop alive. I will admit, I thought this was the story that would have merit to it. This would be the one that would explain why there's activity or reported activity in the Bostwick building. But the cards and the research have spoken. This left me with the question, is the spirit there of a locksmith that killed himself? Again, I used the Aces Yes-No method, and the cards were Ace of Pentacles, Ace of Wands, and the Eight of Wands. Yes, but not only a yes. We have the Eight of Wands confirming that indeed it was a suicide, and that his spirit likely regrets this choice, since the Eight of Wands can represent hasty decisions. Is the locksmith the most active spirit at the Bostwick that we drew cards on at the beginning of this adventure? My gut says yes, but I can't say with any certainty. In my future delves into Tacoma's history, I will continue to keep an eye out for any credible information about this locksmith. I'm particularly interested to see if he was going through a divorce or a breakup at the time of his suicide, if I can even find out who he is, and I'd like to see if his manner of death matches up with what we got in the cards. I've come to describe the Bostwick building as subtly haunted. It's not the kind of haunted with loads of activity that makes for good reality TV, but if you visit the Bostwick, there's a chance the spirits might just take a liking to you and let you know they're there. Not every haunted site is bursting with activity. It is possible for a site to be haunted and that you never have an experience there. Remember, spirits are the spectral versions of people. They aren't there to perform for us. They are under no obligation to make themselves known or to show up just because we've popped in for a visit. Before leaving, I did what is customary for me in spaces said to be haunted, and I offered healing to the spirits and a chance for any spirit who wanted it to cross over. This was my first visit to Cremello, and I do plan to go there many more times. So if I learn anything new about the site or have an experience there, be sure that I will give an update. I do hope that you have enjoyed today's episode. Remember that all episodes of Divination Death Witch are archived over on the Spirit Tarot and Healing Arts YouTube channel. So if you're looking for older episodes that are no longer on the Podbean app, you can find them there. And the podcast is also on Spotify as well. And it looks like the archived episodes should always appear on there too, but I'm not 100% certain on that yet. You can find me around the web by using the link tree, which is in the description box for this episode. Don't forget to join the Discord. The link for that is in the link tree too. The intention of the Discord is to create a nice little spiritual community. I'm planning down the road to start doing some lives in the Discord, so be sure to check that out. Until I see you again, blessings to you wherever your journey finds you.